Ladies and gentlemen, can you believe it? It's already time for season 6 of Chewing the Gristle with yours truly, Greg Koch. So many delightful conversations to look forward to. We'll talk about music, yeah, sure. But you know what else we're going to talk about? Anything that comes to mind. So stay tuned. We got some good ones for you. Chewing the Gristle, season 6. Ladies and gentlemen, this week on Chewing the Gristle, we have one of my big mentors, Mike Irish, taught me at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. He is a guitar-playing leviathan as well as being an extraordinarily talented educator. This week, we're Chewing the Gristle with Mike Irish. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome once again as we gather around the gristle fire for a little Chewing the Gristle with yours truly, Gregory Cockery. I'm here with a mentor of mine, a great musician, a great educator, and a cool cat who I have not had a chance to speak with in quite some time. So I'm looking forward to having a convivial conversation via the intergoogles with the mighty Mike Irish. Mike, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm still above ground.
I see you. Now, for those who don't know, Mike was my instructor. Actually, we first met when I was a junior in high school, and you were up at a place called Shell Lake, which was a summer program. It was for high schoolers mostly, right, Mike?
Yep. And when I first met you, I remember we had to do like the guitar auditions and all that stuff, and this talk. I think you were only 6'5" then, and you walked in and played some stuff for me, and basically my jaw dropped. I just said, "Whoa, man, this guy can really play." And so that was back at Shell Lake, and you were playing a Telecaster.
Yes,
and I think that's the week that you swapped with John Shoemaker.
You are correct.
And you said, I got to try that 335 because Mike just said, hey, this Larry Carlton guy, man.
Yes.
You got to check him out. Yeah.
That was so crazy. I remember you playing it. Well, what was so great about it, too, is that at that time, as a guitar player, so many times you interacted with quote unquote jazz people. Yeah. They were dismissive of guitar players usually in general. And if you were not playing a hollow body with flat wound strings, and you had the audacity to bend strings, you were a heretic.
That's right.
So what was so awesome about you is that you were like, hey, what you're doing is really cool. If you wanted to add this other stuff in, you should check out these guys who are kind of in that mold as well. So that was unbelievably fortuitous for myself. Well,
I had good mentors. I mean, thank you for mentioning me as a mentor of yours, but I had really good mentors. And in particular, one, Don Kiernan up here at Michigan Tech, he had the philosophy of giving people a chance. He just said, okay, and he was pretty good at recognizing talent, but give them a chance. And his idea of education was, okay, take them where they're at and just nudge them maybe a direction that they might be interested in. And so when I was at Stevens Point, I really had no desire to make more Joe Passes and Pat Martinos and things like that. Just wanted to take the talent that was there and just say, hey, check this out. In your case, I think it was Larry Carlton, and I think I talked about Robin Ford because Robin Ford had played with Miles Davis a little bit. And I thought, wow, that's kind of a neat way to, satisfy the academic jazz folks with Miles Davis, and then Robin Ford, great blues player.
Right, totally, absolutely. And what's been so wild about it is I've got to be pretty chummy with Robin over the years, which has just been bizarre to figure that full circle.
Yeah. Well, after you were at school, while you talked about in your website and things like that about George coming and having the talk with me.
Yes.
And Well, you come from a family of professionals.
Right.
Right? There are doctors in the families. Your father was a lawyer. Is that right?
Well, yeah, my dad was a lawyer, and my siblings weren't, like doctors or lawyers, but they were definitely professionals. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I can see the concern because, the young spawn comes forth and says, I want to be a troubadour.
Right.
And right away, what flashes before your eyes is, let's see, poverty, eating out of a dumpster, and no grandchildren.
Boy, were they in for a surprise.
That's right. So anyway, after you got out of college, I followed you. I've been following you surreptitiously. You got to look behind, man. I'm there somewhere. But I know you started doing some studio work in Chicago.
Yes.
And that was before the internet and all that stuff. And I was just going, I hope enough people can hear this guy play, because if that's the case, it's going to catch on. But I would imagine, I don't know, did you have some like lean years in there at all?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I got back from school, I was in a band with that Susan Julian gal, and that was a great band. And she had just got off the road with the Bodines, and they had just opened up for U2 all over the world, and she had management interest and all that kind of stuff. And when I play with her band, I was like, this could be it. It's the right amalgam of all the different things I'm into. And it was a great band. It was funky, but it was bluesy. There was a little bit of jazz involved in there as well. So it was kind of a cool amalgam. But it was kind of my first foray into realizing how the business works or doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so after about a year of doing that, I realized this isn't for me. I got to do something else. So I was up in Minneapolis for a few months and didn't play one gig the entire time I was up there. And I knew people too, but it was the strangest thing. It was very, very cliquey. And and I was and then I got a call from somebody who said, hey, come back, let's put a band together. And it was a guy I really looked up to, this bass player, singer guy from Texas who could sing great. So I came back and I did this band with him for a couple months, and we started to play all the clubs and festivals. And then he's like, man, I want to move down to Nashville. I've got some songwriting interest, publishing interest. I'm just going to. So he leaves us high and dry. And so I was left with the alternative. I've had all these gigs on my lap, and I said, well, we could either just cancel them or I could put my own band together. And so I realized right then and there that I was just going to run my own band. And so.
Was that the Tone Controls?
That was, yeah. So that goes back to like 1990, late 89. Well, actually 1990, right?
Yeah.
And then I just kind of did it from there. And we would encounter various different peoples over the years that, whether it be the guys from Tower of Power, or one of the guys, the guitar player, was going to try to get us a deal, or Paul Barrere from Little Feat, or my buddy Catfish Hodge, or, T. Lavitz, all these different people I knew. And they really enjoyed the band, and they would do sessions with us and gigs and so on and so forth. But there was just never anybody going, hey, why don't you play with us over here? So I was like, maybe I'm just destined to do my own thing.
Yeah.
Then when the Fender thing came along, that was my opportunity to kind of expand it beyond the area here. Because, the one thing I always ran into was, the stylistic thing. I always liked all these different things. You know what I mean? Yeah. I like blues. I considered that kind of being, the nucleus of what I did. But I also enjoyed all these other different elements and wanted to add that all in there. Not to talk about me, because I want to talk about you. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. And then, I actually was through a Fender clinic that down in Chicago. The guy, Gary Gand, who owned Gand Music. Okay. He's like, man, do you do sessions? And I go, well, yeah. I mean, I get called here and there back in Milwaukee. He's like, well, I know a guy down here that he does sessions all the time. This guy named Terry Fryer. And, and people say that stuff, but, do you ever really get a call? And literally 2 days later, I got a call to do a session, and then off to the races. So I would go down there fairly often and do stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's like we, told when we were at Stevens Point, Steve Zenz and I had Well, just short story long. No,
Hey,
long story short.
We got plenty of time.
Short. That's we had proposed to a new dean there that they really needed to have. We were just going to do a jazz studies minor on the music education degree. That's what it started as. But the new dean came in from the Cincinnati Conservatory and said to Don Green, the department chair at the time, and said, "Hey, you should really have a jazz program." And when I was a graduate student there, I just dreamed big, man.
Right.
So I wrote up a proposal to Don, and it was just a project for a master's degree program. And I explained exactly what they needed, the personnel they needed, the budget. I just went the whole 9 yards, man. And I got an A on the project. So Don stuck it in his drawer somewhere. And then the new dean comes in and talks to him and says, "Oh, hey, Don, I think you should think about having a jazz program." And he said, "Oh, yeah? Here." He whipped it on his desk. And it was about a week later, the dean calls up Don and says, "Get this guy in here. I want to talk to him."
No kidding.
So, oh, yeah, it's exactly the way it worked. And then I brought in Steve Zenz, and we went in and we sold it. And he said, "Well, we got to have some metrics, academia, right?"
Right.
And so some metrics as far as enrollment, graduation rate, retention, and all that stuff. So anyway, he basically gave us 3 years. And so Steve and I, went to work, and I was, they said, "Well, your teaching load should be 12 credits. Well, I was up to 17. And I'm lucky I'm still married because it was my wife, Deb, who said, while I was still teaching public school, says, you really, you got to go to graduate school. So she had a cherry job at that time. So she put me through school, and I'm forever grateful because, I ended up with 35 years in the college ranks and everything. So yeah. It was great. So anyway, we put it on Paul's desk, and he gave us the metrics. And long story short, we brought in the 3-year metrics in 2 years.
Excellent.
And the rest is history. So then we were able to bring in some other people, John Rad, Bob Case,
right.
And we got the vocal jazz thing going with Chuck Reichel and all those people. And so it was really successful. But our approach was, everybody else was doing like Lawrence Conservatory and UW Green Bay and Eau Claire and, all the Midwest powers there.
Right.
They were all doing big band.
Exactly.
So, the big band, we got 5 big bands here. But Steve and I, since we're rhythm section guys, which is unusual for a director of jazz studies.
Totally.
Yeah. So we said, no, the world doesn't, revolve around big bands anymore.
Right.
It revolves around rhythm sections. So that's what we did. We had a ton of combos. You guys, were playing in combos and stuff. You split off. I think you had Cold Shot.
Yes.
At the Cabin and all those places where
right.
you said that you majored in beer, which may have been true. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, I was a little thirsty back then, but
Yeah.
Hey,
well,
I'm still here.
6'7" can consume a lot of the taste.
Yeah,
man.
back in the day.
Yeah. So
what was wild about back then was just to your point. It's like, when I was looking for a place to go, it was very, very frustrating. I remember Herb Ellis had a new kind of GIT-ish school in San Antonio. I think it was called the Southwest Guitar Conservatory, even though technically that's not really Southwest. But anyway, and I was interested in going there because I was into the blues thing and so on and so forth. And Stevie Ray had just come out, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and this guy Eric Johnson had come out, and of course, everyone from Freddie King to Johnny Winter and Albert Collins, all those guys were Texas guys. So I was like, I need to go to Texas. and I remember talking to my parents about it. I was like, listen, I want to go to this place down in in Texas, and they're like, well, is it an accredited place? And I didn't know what accredited meant from anything, And they're like, well, you need to get a college degree. So just, pick out any UW school and we'll pay for it. And I'm like, awesome. Of course, back then paying for college was, $1,400 a year.
Right. Yeah.
Or something like that. But, anywho, so I remember always hearing that Eau Claire was the place to go.
Yeah,
that was the jazz school du jour, and so I applied. I got in. I got my roommate assignment, all of that stuff, and then somewhere over that summer, prior to my freshman year, I found out that there was no electric guitar teacher up there. There was only a classical teacher.
That's right.
Like, I'm not going there, and so I didn't go. And so that first semester of what would have been my freshman year, I took off, and let me tell you, that was. When all your friends are going off to school and doing stuff, and you're, the self-esteem peters out just a tad.
Yeah.
And then I remembered the great experience I had with you at Shell Lake, and my buddy Bill Young was already going to school in Stevens Point.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, she's teaching up at Stevens Point. So then I went up there, we visited with my dad. We're like, this is the place to go. Right. And, but let me ask you this, because I think, obviously music business it changes every minute, but back then it seems like the two career paths that made the most sense for someone attending someplace like Stevens Point back then was either to go into academia to be a teacher, or back then, what we call a lounge musician. Because there were, like, even in Stevens Point itself, there was a Holiday Inn where, you would go and was it like week or 2 week increments where you would literally travel all around the continental United States, just putting together, gigs at these, and you would start off the night doing kind of cocktail music, jazz standards, so on and so forth. And then you would play the songs of the day, and people would dance and hook up with their cougars or whatever. But isn't that right? That was kind of the recipe back then, right?
Yeah, and people could work.
Right.
Howard Roberts called that industrial guitar. I like that, man. And it's putting food on the table, and the thing about some of the jazzers that I just, I would go out on the pop gigs and things like that. And you always have the saxophone player that shows up that would just go, oh, I got to do this. I want to do giant steps. I want to do countdown,
right.
All that. I want to play Coltrane. And, on break, I'd say, look, Ace, don't take the gig. Don't take the gig, because it's stupid. It's stupid that you're here. Either you do the gig and do it right,
and enjoy
or don't
it.
do it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and some people would look at me and go, well, you're a music slut, and everything. And I go, no, I don't think so. I think I want to do whatever job I have as well as I can.
Right.
And that's what we were trying to get across to people at Stevens Point. We weren't telling you that, hey, this is going to be, your dream gig. But, if you play the Dinner Theater at Chanhassen for 2 weeks, you can put down some good cash.
No doubt about it.
And then that can allow you to do what you want to do.
Right.
What Wes Montgomery did that. Everybody goes, I can remember when he was recording for AMM Records. Everybody says, well, that's the guy that just plays the octaves. And he had some. He had some great pop music that just,
totally.
Windy and all that. But then you go and look at the Riverside recordings.
Right.
He was a fucking genius.
Yeah,
man.
no question.
You can blip that out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's all good. This is unexpurgated.
Wes said that. Okay, I'm popular. People are giving me crap about it, but now I can afford to, do a week at the Jazz Gallery in Milwaukee.
Right.
And things like that. So,
the bottom line is that I think that there's I was just talking about this yesterday with somebody, and it's something that's crossed my mind lately, is that I think there's a lot of people that look at their musical abilities as just a means to an end. Oh, I've done this and I've got this, and so I'm entitled to that, as opposed to the people like myself and yourself who just love to play. And it's all about being in the moment. So whether we're doing a teaching gig or doing a video or doing a cocktail gig or playing our own stuff, I enjoy it all in various. It's like I talk about pizza. It's like I like all pizza. I like some better. But I like the same thing with coffee. It's like there's not bad coffee to me.
There we go. For sure. Yeah, that's the way it's got to be, man. I retired from Michigan Tech in 2018. And somebody said to me the other day, I said, well, are you still, what are you going to do? Are you going to still do music? I go, are you kidding?
Right.
So I've got a horn band. It started out as a 4-piece blues band that we put. It's a funny little story. There's a place up here called the Library Bar, and they've had. See, that's a great thing for a college town, right? Hey, mom and dad, I'm going to the library.
Brilliant marketing.
There we go. Yeah. So anyway, they called me up in August and said, starting in September, we're having Texas Rub Barbecue on Wednesday nights. We want a blues band. Can you put one together? And I'm going like, holy crap. So I found, I knew a good young blues player, singer like Albert Collins, the whole thing, Stevie Ray. And I used a bass player and drummer that I've used forever. And we put it together in like 2 weeks. So we played as a quartet every Wednesday through New Year's. And then they said, well, okay, no more. And I, when I worked with a great piano player, Eddie Russ.
Oh, I remember Eddie Russ, yep.
Yeah, you remember Ed. Ed said, whenever you get a gig, first thing you think of is, where are you going to go after this gig ends?
Right.
You got to be thinking about it right away. So anyway, we kept the quartet together, but the guitar player said, hey, man, I've always wanted to play, as a blues player, said, I've always wanted to play with a horn section. So I go, you came to the right guy. So that was 15 years ago. That was 2017. Let's see, 2008. Yeah, 15. Or whatever. My math isn't good.
That's all right.
Musicians can count to 4.
Exactly.
5, and 5/8 is only 3 and 2. So, so we did that, and so I've still got this band going now. I love it, and I've had a solo guitar gig, jazz, pop things for 23 years.
Nice.
At this tea room. And there are 3 local singers that I'll back either as just me or with a bass player and drummer. So anyway, I'm happier than a clam, man.
Awesome. Now, do you still have that old ES-175 with the single pickup?
I don't, but let me tell you what I've got though. I got a 1981 Epiphone Howard Roberts. The one were made in Korea, really well made.
Oh yeah,
that's my solo guitar workhorse.
Nice.
But then I've got a whole bunch of stuff. I got to show you one real quick.
Yes.
This is my brother-in-law is a woodworker, so I said, "Hey, build me a Telecaster body."
Oh, look at that! Oh my God.
Yeah. So he calls himself the Old Tortoise. So this is the Torticaster.
Oh, that's beautiful. What kind of wood is that?
Well, let's see. We've got walnut, black cherry, American elm, which is hard to find, and something like babinga.
Babinga. That looks glorious.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's solid enough that it sustains forever. So anyway, that's one of them. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, let's talk a little bit about when we were in at school. We worked out of that Dennis Sandoli book, Guitar Lore, which is a great book. I still reference it regularly. And and of course he was Pat Martino's guy, and
Right.
and he was Coltrane studied theory with this guy and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Where did you first run across that book and get that idea for working out of that?
There was a guy up here. His name was Dennis Gorgas, and Dennis was a really fine straight ahead player and everything. And he had studied with Dennis in Philadelphia. He moved here. His wife was an artist, but she was able to work from home, and they always wanted to she was of Finnish descent.
Which many people are up there, right?
You got that right.
Yeah.
So this was like little Finland for them. So anyway, Dennis was up here and he gave lessons, and he started teaching me like Dennis's ideas and everything. And apparently he took some lessons from Pat Martino too.
Okay.
So I had and so I got Dennis's book, and I realized that it was a good reference book.
Right.
I mean, there's no way you could get through that thing in a lifetime. I mean, and very honestly, there's some things in there that are technical curiosities. Okay.
Right.
I mean, but they do teach you how to get around the axe.
Right. No doubt.
And I remembered when I was talking with you one time, we in like lessons and stuff, and you said, "Hey, I want to learn how to play changes," and a lot of teachers would say, "Oh, then we got to play straight ahead jazz to do that." No, you don't, man.
Right.
I mean, just think of all the great harmony that Steely Dan had, and Weather Report, and all those guys, and that's what I was more into. So I remember when you said about playing changes, and you said, well, let's look at some Wayne Shorter,
right?
Like El Gaucho. I think you played that on your senior recital.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And I think you played Room 335, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But with changes, and I just so appreciated that a young, extremely talented, creative guy said, "Hey, I want to take it the next step further. I may not play, straight ahead jazz or whatever, but I want to know how to play changes."
Yeah.
That it just so impressed me.
Well, thank you. I mean, you were a great instructor in that regard. And again, it was all about being, not being shot down, because I mean, so many times, and of course, you realize as you get older that, you can deflect and just realize that some people are just miserable by nature, regardless, as far as wanting to talk down to people and being exclusive and all that other kind of stuff. But it was so motivating to realize that, no, it's perfectly fine to have this, these blurred lines of idioms and so on and so forth, if that's what your vision is,
Yeah.
And, I got to tell you a funny story. So speaking of Robert Ford, so he played on one of my records, and I had this descending series of chords. And it was one of those, I love tunes that either, you can play over the changes or you don't have to play over the changes.
Right.
And so it was this series of chords where you could just be like an E major pentatonic, and it's going to do the BB King thing, and it's going to sound fine over every one of those chords, right?
Yeah.
Or you could let the good times roll and get a little fun with it and mess with it. And so I was like, Robin, I just want to see what you're going to do over this tune. And he played the shit out of it. Of course, right away. It was just like there was no like, oh, let me figure this out. You know what I mean? But what I realized what he did, which was so interesting to me, is that out of all those weird inversions I was doing, he immediately gravitated towards whatever strong triad there was in any of those chords and play a pentatonic off that triad.
Right.
And it sounded hip as hell. It was really something that,
too, is that
oh, I lost you there for a minute. I'm sorry. Start that again. We got it. We got a little drop out there. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's what's going to be interesting for the listener is that you've made it your own. then, because everybody's going to go up and down the pentatonic, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Right.
DB was a soulful player, man.
Yeah.
But introducing just that other approach, which really is, it's sort of like you're digging into the changes,
Right.
And that's why you put those changes in there.
Right.
It's just like saying, "Welcome to my world."
Right. Exactly correct.
Come in and play. It reminds me of a thing. I was listening to a Herbie Mann record.
Oh yeah.
And he had Reggie Young on there and Larry Coryell.
Right.
So I was listening to this thing, and they're playing like What I Say, or whatever, and doing this thing. And Reggie does his thing, and with Fuzz Face or whatever. And Larry Coryell comes in, and he plays, just like a pretty burning blues lick. Then the next phrase was like right out of Charlie Parker.
Right.
But it fit, and I literally fell off my chair. I said, "What was that? What was that?" And you got to know, man. I think I wore out the record trying to figure it out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I love those little amalgams of things where people kind of, jump the ship and go. But lately, I've really been into the idea of just randomly responding to what you just played. And it may not be lick oriented at all. You know what I mean? They're just like musical utterances. And because, we've gotten to the point now, especially with, just the amount of information. When we think back about when we were younger, it's like, you'd read about somebody in Guitar Player magazine, and they would mention, and you're like, man, I'm really into this, like just as an example, when I got into Albert Lee, I didn't know any country guitar players. I knew Albert Lee because he played on this Clapton record. And I was like, well, where did he get this stuff from? So I read this article about Albert Lee, and he's mentioning Jimmy Bryant and Hank Garland and, of course, Chet Atkins, who I'd heard of, but, Jerry Reed. I'm like, the truck driver from, but back then it's like, unless you were really, a go-getter in terms of like sending away for exotic records or going to conventions, your run-of-the-mill record store is not going to have anything that deep where you could actually source this stuff. So it was, it was really a quest to learn this stuff. Either you saw the person live, you knew somebody that kind of played in that style, like, oh, that must be the way that so-and-so plays, because and then you'd finally get like one record, or someone would make you a cassette. Yeah. But nowadays you could, I remember a couple of years back, I got this Django, there was a newer Django Reinhardt book. It had all these different things of the stuff that he listened to. You're like, well, where are you going to hear those records? Well, somebody has uploaded all that stuff to YouTube. There's literally everything you are even passively interested in, you can find and figure out. If there's not someone themselves showing you their stuff, there's somebody else showing it as a breakdown. A lot of times it's wrong, but there's other people that get it right. And so, as I like to say, there's really no reason to suck at this point.
Well, exactly. There's no reason except motivation.
Right.
And see, you're a very talented cat, man. I remember when you first walked in and you played like 2 or 3 licks at Shellac, and I go, this guy's got incredible hands. I call them athletes. George Benson is an athlete on the guitar. Jim Hall is not, and things like that. And I thought, whoa, this is really cool. Anyway, but people don't realize the thousands of hours you've put in, man. And there are a lot of people that are still, God bless or God damn, one of the two, the people online that say, here's the secret, do this, and in 30 days, you'll be the hot shit of the world.
Right.
It ain't going to work, dude.
No.
And it takes that motivation. And that's what's lacking. You had it. All the great players have it. And sorry, like you said, it's all there. It's all there. Let me give you an all there, just quick story if we got time. Okay. I got a call about a month ago to play with a choir that's doing a major new choir work. It's called Considering Matthew Shepard. Yep. And the guitar book is, it's challenging.
Right.
So I got to play acoustic flat pick, bluegrass, finger picking. Got to play electric. Got to play some blues. I got to use a looper.
Uh-huh.
And I got to play slide. So now I'm ready to, crap the bed. So what do? I go online to Greg Koch, and you've got some wonderful, quick instruction about slide guitar playing, how to do it, especially the right hand, muting and everything. Boom. I'm an average slide player right now. I am not going to crap the bed, man. So anyway,
awesome.
Thank you, dude.
Well, thank you. I love that story. We interrupt this regularly scheduled gristle-infested conversation to give a special shout out to our friends at Fishman Transducers, makers of the Greg Koch signature Fluence Gristle Tone pickup set. Can you dig that? And our friends at Wildwood Guitars of Louisville, Colorado, bringing the heat in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. Well, it's. I mean, like I wake up in the morning and after I make coffee, which is absolutely paramount.
I'll
just sit down and grab a guitar and start. I just like playing. It's like I tell the story about how not to name drop or anything, but when I visited, I was out on the West Coast, and Joe Bonamassa invited me over to his place because I'd known him for years, and I'd never been to his house to look at all of his guitars. Right, so he's like, "Come on over." And he goes, "Well, what do you want to see it?" And at that point, I'd already seen all of his Les Pauls. I said, "Let me see the Telecasters." Right. So we go out, and he has this other building. There's a kind of a little hut behind his house that was whoever owned the house before that had a recording studio back there, but he doesn't use it as such. Yeah. He uses it to store all of his guitars. And he had a 1949 broadcaster in there. Right.
Oh,
and so I grabbed the broadcaster and I plugged it in. And it had the squishiest, most delightful sounding neck pickup. And he started bringing other, check this one out. I was like, no, I'm good with this one. Once I sat down, and I just wanted to play it. I just like to sit down and play. And I think that's the thing that, maybe a lot of people don't understand is that it's just, I play all day if I could, and if there's a lull, my wife's like, I got to do something. And we just got done doing a bunch of errands or whatever, and she's got to do something on her computer for work, do some graphic design stuff or whatever the case may be. I'll just sit down and I'll grab my phone and I'll put on iTunes and I'll play along with records.
Yeah.
I mean, it's as fun now as it was when I was, 14, which makes me think maybe I've not matured at all. But
I haven't either. I'll tell you that, man.
As I like to say, it's beats Jaeger and blow.
There we go. Yeah. That is so true. There's a funny story about Lenny Bro. Lenny, same way. He said, when it wasn't playing, I mean, he was off in his own world doing his thing. And, Lenny, if you ever looked at his right hand, he's got like nails like, right. Addams Family.
Right.
And everything. And he played
Dracula.
Mostly played with just nail, and anyway. So a funny story about him, Lauren Lofsky was telling me about this. She says, somebody was walking along the street with Lenny in like Toronto, it's winter, icy and everything. And he's walking along. He slips. He's got his guitar. He slips. Does he put his hand out to stop the fall? Nope. It was like this. Face plants, face is all messed up and everything. First thing he looks at is, my nails are okay, man.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your influence. You mentioned Lenny Bro. So you grew up in Leona, Wisconsin, and I
did.
I always remember that because my parents have had a cottage up north, and all the kids have it now, and It's in Crivitz, Wisconsin. And so during the summers, we would, especially when the kids were younger, we'd go to Camp 5, the lumberjack camp there, and ride on the steam engine.
That's right.
And so you grew up there. So what was your motivation to get into music, and who were the first people you were listening to?
First of all, I started, I have one sister. She's 10 years older than I am, a wonderful pianist, but now she's got arthritis. So God bless her, she can't do that anymore. So I started playing piano when I was, first grade. So I played that from first through sixth, and sixth grade, it was baseball, basketball, and I started playing guitar in sixth grade. And so I was, my dad and my uncle and my grandfather were amateur musicians, but they were like bluegrass, take it down to the levee, and things like that. And my dad played guitar. He was a good tenor banjo player, and he played the chromatic, well, they call it mouth organ, the harmonica, and good player. So, and he taught me to, like 1, 4, 5, except he called it first change, second change, third change. So he taught me all. He said, well, let's play Alabama Jubilee. Well, Alabama Jubilee has a fourth change in there too. Right. Anyway, so he say, okay, here we go. So I play that, and then and so we do these things. It was with my dad. So, I mean, it was just cool. Cool. So at a very young age, I was ear trained. I understood basically that there are chord progressions and 1, 4, 5. I didn't know the names of any of this stuff until I went to college. Right. And once I got there and I realized, I know all the theory, I just don't know the names. I learned the names and aced it out. So anyway, so I did that. And so my dad liked Chet Atkins. At the time on television, there was a show that Jimmy Dean did. And his guest very often was Roy Clark. Okay, yeah. And so he had an album, an instrumental album out called The Lightning Fingers of Roy Clark. Everybody had to have that because, right. Everything. So, we would dig in that. I would dig Chet, Right. I also was, digging the Beatles and obviously, the rock and roll songs of the time. Yep. Right. Songs of the day and everything. And we would do that. And so I had this mishmash. And I remembered my parents had like a lot of 78 records. And I remember there was one thing called the Dill Pickle Rag. It was like stride piano. In fact, well, I can't show you, but I've got the record on my wall here. Awesome. Oh, it is. First thing. And, so I did that. All right. So long about 67, Leona is out in the Tules. Yeah. And so I went to the library, and the librarian had this new magazine called Guitar Player. Yes. I thought, what the hell? So I go in there, and just like you, I can't get enough of it. I'm learning all these names. Who's Joe Pass? Right. Who's all this stuff, and everything. And I couldn't get enough. So, that northeastern Wisconsin is homogeneously white. Right. If you go out to the bars, you're going to hear country music. You're going to hear Buck Owens and, all that and everything, which is cool. I got into that and everything. But I don't know how I think I found something at school, a James Brown record. Aha! In like 1968. And I just came apart. I said, that is it. That just the funk thing, and so, and my friends would go, well, you're listening to N music. Right. And I said, damn right I am, man. Right. Check this out. That's how I learned the E9 chord, right? So now where were you going to school at that time? I was in high school. Oh, you were in high school, okay. Yeah, so, okay, just a quick thing. So 1967, I got into my first rock band. Okay. And I was a nerd, but I knew chords and I could take stuff off record. So I could teach the whole band. So they had to put up with Mr. Nerd. Okay. And my mother, God bless her heart, she was a public school teacher for many years. And she just had this witchy talent of knowing what people need. Different students I saw it throughout her career. So we're in Rhinelander, Lincoln Music Center.
Home of the Hodags.
There we go, the home of the Hodags. And this guy who owns Lincoln Music Center looks like Don Wilson of the Ventures, the rhythm guitar player, like hair and everything. So they said, well, we're going to just drop you off here. We got to go shopping. So they came back, and so I didn't know. And I was in there. I was looking at that, and I must have been staring at this 67 ivory Telecaster with maple neck, looking at it like this. I didn't know my mother came in. She walked in, tapped me on the shoulder, says, "Is that the one you want?" I was shell shocked. I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, okay. She went over and said, take it off. Here, put it in the black case with the orange on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. $274.73 with tax.
Jesus.
I know if I'd have kept that guitar, I was looking the other day, it's like, I don't know, $4,000 now or something. But
it'd be more than that. 67? Yeah, probably. Yeah. It'd be about 10.
Well, it was one of the smugglers.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that till later. Anyway, so, okay, I'll shorten the story. 67. So during the school year, I'm playing in a rock band. Poverty's Children.
Yes.
I love it, man. And we had a Chrysler station wagon. I didn't, but we were using that and everything. And every once in a while, we'd have to tighten the lugs on the wheels and the lug would break off, but anyway, so they called it the Jesus Chrysler, right? So that was, that was our bandwagon. And so we would play.
That's a great name for a band.
Yeah, I know, right? Probably get sued, but that's all right. So anyway, rock band would break up in the summertime, right? So what am I going to do? Well, because I could play chords and I could read chord changes, some of the older musicians that played the resorts around northern Wisconsin, they said, all right, we'll take this young shit on. And so I played rhythm guitar, and we'd do Don Ho, Tiny Bubbles, Folsom Prison Blues, all this. But I got to go to all these resorts, man. The Eagle Waters Resort and over to St. Germain and, all these things. So during the year, I was rock and roll. During the summer, I was playing
whatever you had to play.
Yeah, and old standards. I remember this one tenor player, Tough Love. I mean, he dug me, but he would never let me know that. Yeah. And he'd say, "What do you mean you don't know that tune?" He says, "Learn those changes,
right?
For next time, right? Or you ain't crap unless you can play Chet Atkins,
right? Yeah,
and stuff like that." So, all right, did that. Then I went to Michigan Tech, and with a forestry degree. And,
I didn't know that you were a forestry degree.
Yeah, I'm a science nerd too. So anyway, so I did that. Then halfway through my junior year, I was ready to skate to music school because I was having too much fun. But my parents just, said, When I went to them, I'm going like kind of shaking. I'd really like to go to music school. And they, and so anyway, we worked it out. They said, no, you're going to finish your degree. Then, if you want to go to music school, we can't pay for the whole thing or anything, but we'll help you as much as we can.
Right.
So I said, okay. So then I went to Northern Michigan, and what was really cool about that, I got through there in 2.5 years.
Nice.
All I had to take was music.
Yes.
Nothing else. I took one Mad in Modern World course. 7:00, go to the music building. 10:30, come home at night. Practice during the day in, day out. Plus, I was playing 3 days a week.
Nice.
Or 3 nights a week. So I did that. All right. Get out of school there, get married. My wife had a gravy gig down in central Wisconsin. So I taught down in central Wisconsin there. And meantime, when I was going down there, I realized, Stevens Point, it's 2 hours from Eau Claire, 2 hours from Madison, 2 hours from Green Bay. So I started contacting people around there. And so while I was in central Wisconsin, I worked with Level Lives over at the Carlton, in the Carlton Room in Green Bay. Did a lot of work there. And Level liked it because I could read. Plus, here's a guitar player who can read and play rock and roll.
Right.
So we're gonna have him. So I did that. Played with a lot of people and everything. But geez, I tell you, doing some of those shows, driving back, I'd get home at like 2 a.m, and then got to go to work. Teaching public school kiddies at 8 a.m. Oh. Yeah. That's a young man thing.
You worked off some time in purgatory.
I did, man. So over the years, I just kept doing things. The solo, I would like to say this. If I were back teaching at Stevens Point right now, I would make it mandatory for the guitar players to start to learn some solo guitar repertoire.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. If it's a Stevie Wonder tune, fine. If it's Amazing Grace, fine. Whatever. Because that's the most employable thing out there. And I'll tell you why. You already know this, but I discovered like about 12 years ago, house parties. Here's the scam with the house party. 90 minutes. You go there, 20 minutes, you schmooze the people, fine. Play about a 40, 45-minute set that, in their living room. And these are all rich people. Right. And, rich people like to have higher,
yes.
And things like that. And then afterwards, you sell your CDs and merchandise.
Absolutely.
Then you pack it up. Okay, that happened to be at 4:00 in the afternoon. So then you go to the next rich person house at 7.
Right.
Do the same thing.
Yeah.
And you can do it on nights that you're not working.
Exactly.
You can do it a Tuesday night. You can do it a Wednesday. All these throwaway nights. And you can do it. And people go, oh, isn't this nice? He can play Time in a Bottle, but in a way different from the record.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So, okay.
I had kind of a strange epiphany in that regard when it was, when I was doing a lot of clinics, I would always do them with tracks. You know what I mean? I would have stuff from my records where I would take the main guitar part off, and it just was kind of soul sucking. I would refer to it as guitarioke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And plus, the balance was never right. You know what I mean? You'd get into a place, and it just was not satisfying. And then I remember I saw, I was familiar with Tommy Emmanuel at that point, but that was just that was like otherworldly,
Yes.
And then I saw Doyle Dykes, who's also otherworldly, but when I saw him playing, he opened up with this, just like a shuffle, and he played chords, melody, bass all at the same time. Yeah. And then was able to do like an improvised thing while keeping the comping going. I thought, God damn, he's sitting here by himself, destroying. And how awesome is that? So then I just made it my mission to learn how to be a self-accompanying musician. And to your point, it was, ever since then, that's what made all the, now when I do clinics, I don't play with tracks at all. I just play,
Yeah.
And if I needed to, I could spend the rest of my life doing solo gigs. And
Sure you could.
And plus, it's just fun. It's fun to be able to sit by yourself and make music.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said, why don't you use a looper? I go, that's soul sucking also,
Totally. You hit that thing at the wrong time. The balance is weird.
Jesus.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And when you're playing solo, you can take off in any direction you want.
Exactly.
You decide, I'm going to do this tune, or that tune. So anyway, to your other question, just quick about, so I heard Joe pass.
Yes.
Early on, and I just went, are you kidding me?
Right.
And, but I think probably the one my entry level was Grant Green.
Oh yeah.
And Kenny Burrell.
Yes.
I think because I could do those things.
Yeah, they were easier to understand.
Yeah, and Joe, I just didn't have the chops to do, although I can sing practically every solo off for Django, yet. And so I liked that. I liked Lenny, and probably for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I'm real into, obviously Tommy Emmanuel,
right?
But Martin Taylor.
Oh, yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Yeah, because Martin has a real accessible way of dealing with melody and bass line and another voice. He doesn't even call it chord melody.
Right.
He says, and he talks, George Benson said this too. So if you're playing solo, he said, you have to have motion. You can't just go chord. There has to be something in there that's giving, so chord, be-ba-do-do, chord, da-do-do. Right. Well, you know that.
Yeah.
And so the thing with Martin, it really opened up a lot of stuff for me. So now I'm taking those techniques I learned, and it would take me another 3 lifetimes to get what's in my head to come out here, but I'm having a hoot.
But that never ends. That's the same for one and all.
Yes.
The quest, it never ends.
Yeah, for sure.
So after you got done with Michigan Tech, you were down in central Wisconsin. You were taking some credits at Stevens Point, and that's what led to this this template, if you will, for a program that led to the Stevens Point.
Right. I got done with my master's degree, and there were no gigs, and I couldn't get back into the public school system. So a music store in Wisconsin Rapids, Speltz Music, which is no longer, hired me.
I still have my Speltz Music folders.
There you go, dude. And they hired me as educational consultant, which means that the first job you have is cleaning out the warehouse. All the dusty shit. And I found I don't know, you probably remember this. I found this old 1929 Brubank book. The last page in it is supposed to be inspirational. So it shows this little boy in knickers and this little girl, and they're hand in hand. They're walking this path, but there's chasms all around. And it don't get off into the forest of bad habits.
Yes.
And this and that and this. Right next to the Olympic temple, you fall off into the swamp of jazz.
The swamp of jazz.
So the first fake book we had, I put together at Stevens Point, was the Swamp of Jazz fake book.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Anyway. So I had to do that for 2 years, but in the meantime, I'm taking night courses for my graduate degree. And then when I got done with the degree, they decided, well, let's just try him as an ad hoc faculty member running the jazz band to kind of see if maybe this would work. And so I had the jazz band for 1 year in 82. And then I officially was appointed in 83 and was there till 91. So that's my life story.
And so when you ended with Stevens Point, you ended up going back to Michigan Tech, right? And so what was that transition like? And you were head of the jazz program there, or was it a different kind of?
No, it was like a lateral move. And all my colleagues at Stevens Point said, what the hell are you leaving a program that you've built in a music school to go to basically an engineering school that just had a fine arts program, no music degree? And I said, well, I'm a graduate of there. I know that these kids are super smart.
Right.
I couldn't get into tech now. With my SATs and everything. And so anyway, and then if you know about super smart kids, a lot of them sat first chair in band. They were probably in forensics. They were probably in rock and roll bands like yourself, and things like that. Super talented. So I knew that. And so I knew that going there, I would be working with talented kids. Plus, I wouldn't have to put up with academia.
Right, because that's a whole other thing.
I never had a budget at UWSP. I had to go to the student government, stand in a docket with a space, and then a line of kids who didn't know me from Adam, and say, "And who are you?" And I'd say, "I'm, Director of Jazz Studies. We need this much money to go on tour." Do this. Every damn year, I had to go to those little shits, and they're just sitting there going like, "Yeah, you old fart." I just had that up to here. So Tech said, "Okay, it's going to be meager, but you've got a budget. You spend it the way you want." I said, "I got smart kids. I got a budget." Don Kiernan had 21 years building this program. I walked in, kind of put my stamp on it and everything.
Beautiful.
For me, it was a no-brainer. Absolutely no-brainer. And now the guy up here, young, just a bitchin' trumpet player, Adam Meckler. He plays with Dave Koz. Goes on the road with Dave Koz, yeah. And he played with the Horn Dogs for Prince. Yeah. And he was on a Stevie Wonder album. Anyway, so Adam's the guy now. And we got him here. And every once in a while, if he has to be out of town, he says, "Hey, you want to come in off the bench? Make sure your shoes are tied."
Well, plus the UP is just a beautiful place.
Yeah. We got to talk maybe off camera, but you were talking about maybe coming up this way.
I'd love to do it.
I got a whole circuit for you and some people to talk to.
Awesome.
Good.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son's girlfriend has family up in Munising now.
Oh, beautiful.
And,
yeah, man.
And they're buddies with Mark Farner. Do you ever run into Mark Farner up there?
I ran into him once. Talk about the wilderness here, up here. The piano player for Little Feat, Billy Payne?
Yeah, Billy Payne, yeah.
Yeah, man, he's got a place up here about 8 miles from me, man.
You're kidding me.
No.
I'm buddies with Billy, and I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he comes up here, and, everybody, it's like, Billy's my neighbor. And it's like, he's just one of the guys, man. And he's such a nice cat.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
He is, yeah. And every once in a while, he'll just step out, show up at a gig and say, can I play piano?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. So let's
talk a little bit about some of the old compatriots. So you mentioned Eddie Russ. I remember playing some of his tunes, and they were always cool.
Yes.
And so, is he around anymore?
Eddie passed away. He was only 61 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
He was up for a liver transplant.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember the baseball player Mickey Mantle, right?
Yep.
Mickey Mantle had to have a liver transplant. He could get it right effing now.
Right, of course.
Eddie had to wait. I had Ed up. Basically he had to. He had to be on medication and everything. Played his ass off up here. Could barely get off the stage. And then he passed away not too long ago, or too long after that. So what I did for sabbatical one year, I found all of Eddie's tunes.
Right. La Serena was one of them, right?
Yeah. And I put together a total Ed Russ fake book. And so I've got the C, B flat, E flat, and bass clef version. If you want it, I'll send you the PDFs.
Oh, I'd love it. Yeah, because those are great tunes.
Yeah, man.
Speaking of tunes that were cool, that were just cool changes, but not like brain surgery changes, some of them. They were just nice tunes.
Yeah. And Ed was, for a while, Oscar Peterson had a music school in Toronto, and Ed was one of his instructors. So Ed, every gig we played, I played with Eddie for 10 years, and that's where my real jazz training came. I call it the University of Ed Russ.
Uh-huh.
And every night, playing on a stage with that guy and these players way better than myself, just kicked your ass all the time. but to listen to what he did. And every night he would play a solo piece to die for.
Oh, awesome.
Honest to God, we would be sitting in the wings, all of us. Rick Lepinen, the bass player, he's the bass player with Pearl Django now.
Oh, cool.
And we would just sit there going,
wow, yeah.
It was just fantastic. So, yeah.
Then there was another one. Frank Mantooth was another one.
Frank Mantooth. Yeah, the Tooth. The Tooth, man. Brilliant guy. Few people knew that Tooth had like about 174 IQ.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. But he never let anybody know it. And he had perfect pitch. And he was just a demon. And, yeah. And he liked his herbal combustibles.
Yes.
So I would, when I had I commissioned him, he would work on his commission in the morning. And he had a new son at that time who he called the Rooster. He said, I had to work in the morning before the rooster's up. So he'd be sitting there, and every once I'd be talking with him, and I'd hear kind of like, like this. So, but an incredible musician. But one of the musicians who actually could intimidate him, and not purposely, was Eddie. He just came apart. He would listen to Eddie and just shake his head. He said, oh my God, I don't want to follow that guy.
Bless him.
So yeah, Tooth.
And then of course we got the mighty Steve Zenz, who I saw him this past summer. He's looking good. He is, and he is doing so much great work for Shell Lake. Shell Lake is, they've got a building plan, and he's raising money for it. And instead of, having to be, you remember the digs there, man, yes.
don't you?
Yes.
Oh man. Oh, being in those dormitories, no air conditioning.
Oh, I remember
hotter than
it.
hell. Yeah. Well, they're going to get a new program.
Nice.
I think so. Steve's great, man. He's my soul brother.
He's a good man, doggone it.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, listen, it's been so great catching up. We haven't talked in so long. We converse a little bit online here and there, but yeah, I'd love to come up there and do a little respite and play up there and scald some brains.
Yeah.
Brains need scalding.
They do. And the reason people love live music up here is because all the 60s hippies and everything wanted to go north where the air was clear. And a lot of those people ended up here. And now they got children and grandchildren, and they all, live music is it's killing, man.
That's awesome.
They love it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's my PR. Yeah.
So great seeing you. And
you too, brother.
I hope to see you in the flesh soon. Say hello to your lovely wife for me.
Yeah, you too. And take care of your son and talented daughter and everything.
Yes, I shall do it. All right, my friend. Have a good one.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Chewing the Gristle. We certainly do appreciate you stopping by. Make sure you tell your friends all about us. I think they might enjoy themselves. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.